great. The browser is failing to play the video clip. All right. So the little intro thing is not going to play for us. That's okay. But I don't see either one of us. So what's going on here? Okay. What is going on?
I see you okay.
All right, let me try that again. So we are live. Everybody just give us a moment. We're technical difficulties. So let me just upload the artwork. Dun, dun, dun. All right. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for sticking with us through that technical challenge there for a minute. This is Comics for All once again, so thank you for joining us wherever you are in the world. My name is Jameson. I'm your host here at Comics for All. I'm a comics librarian, and Comics for All, if you don't know, is where comics, creativity, and community all connect. Today is Monday, July 6th, 2026. Thank you for coming. Everybody in America, I hope you had a wonderful holiday weekend. This is Ink and Insight, our interview series where we interview people involved with comics from all over. And joining us today is the wonderful Ed Davis from Finish Line Comics, who also currently has a Kickstarter project, which we're going to dive into. But Ed, how is your Monday going?
So far, so good.
Excellent. Well, thank you for coming into the show again. I really appreciate it. As a librarian, I like to ask some reader-centric questions to everybody who comes on. What hooked you into comics as a reader? When did you start finding comics to read for yourself?
I think I must have been probably about 6 years old, maybe five to six, somewhere around there. And there was a collected version of the first few issues of Spider-Man and the Amazing Fantasy, and that just hooked me. I had never seen or read anything that gave me that much excitement. I just remember reading it over and over and over again and begging my dad to take me. We got it at a swap meet because we lived in this really rural area. So there at this point in time when we were living there, you had to drive miles to get to a grocery store. There were no 7-Elevens or anything, but there was one guy at the swap meet who had just, a section of little collected comic books. And I remember reading that Spider-Man one and then getting the Avengers, getting the Iron Man, and we're talking all of the early ones that had maybe the first 6 issues together. And it was it just sucked me in, and I loved that world and kind of just never stopped from that point.
Love that. Well, for people meeting you for the first time, Ed, how would you introduce yourself and Finish Line Comics? What is Finish Line Comics all about?
Finish Line Comics is an independent publishing company. I started it to publish my own books and eventually want to start branching out and publishing others along the way. But
there we go.
It's a place where we have uncompromised stories that we can tell in the vision that we want. It's one of the biggest perks of being indie. If you need 28 pages to make the issue, you make it 28 pages. You don't have to worry about trimming things down. You can tell your story the way that it needs to be told, and that's the biggest thing that we go for at Finish Line Comics is just getting the stories out there the way they were meant to be told.
Absolutely. And kind of the natural follow to, especially when you described your reading story, when did you have the realization for yourself that you wanted to create and be part of the people who make comics?
That came a lot later because in the earlier days, I never realized that the people who were making comics didn't all have to be artists.
Right.
My assumption was, if you're a comic writer, you have to have an artistic talent. You need to be able, I figured, the writer was sketching things out and sending them to the artist and not just writing a script. And that script was all that the artist needed because the script created the vision in their mind. So it took me, it would have been probably around like 2016 or 2017. The librarian at the school that I work at.
Yeah, shout out librarian.
Yes. He is also an artist. He went through the Kubert School in New Jersey, and we were just
Very
kind of
cool.
talking stories. And he said, "You know what? This is something that we need to make into a comic." So I had originally been writing it as a novel series, and just took all of those notes and started adapting them into comic because I realized, okay, my all I need is the words to make this into a comic book. And it's kind of like the writing I teach. It's descriptive writing. You need to be able to paint a picture with your words, and then the artist turns it into real pictures.
That's right. That's a great way to describe it, actually. And kind of another reader centric question. And I know not everybody in the creative space has a lot of free time to read,
Mhm.
but have you got to read anything, comics or otherwise, that has stood out to you?
I do a lot of listening to the books, like the audiobooks when I'm running, because
Speaking
I
of that,
go
did you
out.
see that Image is putting out their first audiobook?
No, I didn't see that. That's so
Yeah,
cool.
it is very cool. I just saw that yesterday. I'm like, love that.
Yeah, so I the one that I just read or just finished going through was the Our Band Could Be Your Life book. I think
Hmm.
it's Michael Azarad, and it just kind of documents the early punk scene with different showcasing different bands from Flag to Fugazi to I'm trying to think who else is the Minutemen, Husker Du, and just kind of chronicling their early years and those years where they were living out of the vans and just struggling to be seen all the way to, and none of these most of these bands I would say didn't get signed to major labels or anything like that. But if they did, that's where the story would stop. Once they got signed, it's like, okay, that's a new story for a different thing. But it's more of those early struggles of the bands and not the glorious thing that you imagine. You think, okay, these bands are out there living the life. And it's like, nope, they're just going from city to city and struggling to find anything to eat. So
Yeah.
it was really cool to hear of or these early punk and hardcore bands that I listened to. So that's the last one that I just read.
Excellent. I have not heard of that one, so I'm gonna have to check it out.
Yeah.
Kind of a more of an industry question, but what
Mhm.
is exciting or positive to you about the kind of the industry on the creative side and or the reading slash consumer side of things?
On the comic side,
Yeah, on either side, if you want to talk about on the creative side, what's exciting or positive, or on being a reader slash consumer yourself.
I mean, I back and read a lot of Kickstarter campaigns. I'm one of those
Me too.
people. I just crashed. I think my number 600.
Whew,
So
wow,
I like to back and support the indie people, and there's a lot of great stories going
there
on in the
is.
indie world. So I think that's something that excites me. As far as the mainstream, I'm liking the absolute Batman, Wonder Woman series. Those ones
So good.
have, have been really good, and just kind of you need to do something because these are characters that have been around for years. Not to say they're not great characters, but what stories can you tell? Well, it's kind of starting it over. And Spider-Man did it years ago. We had the Spider-Man, and then it branched into a whole bunch of different Marvel books where they launched their own alternate universe that, similar but not the same. And I think those books are a lot of fun to read.
Oh, totally. And kind of looking back on your creative career at this point, what parts of your creative background do you feel like has kind of most shaped the way you tell stories?
I've always been a storyteller. It's one of these things where I grew up in the middle of the desert. It was unpopulated, and I had a little group of friends, and it was just all of us always bouncing stories off each other. And I was
Yeah,
writing and composing stories from the youngest age I can remember. I mean, I'm just writing these things, and then my friends, they had really religious parents, and they weren't allowed to watch any of the fun stuff. So I would sit there and recreate the stories for them. Like, okay, last night I just watched this movie called Heavy Metal, and
yeah,
it's a cartoon, and then I'm just sitting here basically retelling the entire movie to them, you
right,
know. So it was one of those things that I always was doing that, and I was the one that they're like, "Oh, what'd you see last night? What's the newest story?" And I'm like, "Well, want to hear one of my own stories that's not from a movie I snuck up and watched last night?"
right.
So yeah, it was those things where I always love to just kind of weave the story with these people and share my own stories and other people's stories. So it was always a lot of fun.
Excellent. Well, we're going to dive right into the majority of the series, which we're going to talk about today, The Immortal Era, which is also currently on Kickstarter. But before we dive into the current Kickstarter, we're going to
Mhm.
talk about the series itself, Ed.
Yes.
obviously it's been running long enough now that this is, issue 12 and volume 2 in a trade version.
Yes.
And readers have really kind of grown with it. How do you feel like
Mhm.
the series has changed, if at all, from the beginning?
I mean, I think with this series, I think it was a lot of just growing along with the artist, because when I started this series, my artist who's still working on it, it was his, I think, second book he had ever done. So
Okay.
he was learning along the way. And for me, I've always had the story. I know all of the major points that are going to happen in the story, but it's learning first off how to write a comic book. It's not the same as a novel.
Nope.
And my first drafts of this of the first couple issues were so overloaded with dialogue that the art disappeared. So I've had to learn how to scale back on that. And we are doing indie, so you can have a little wordier comic, because the ones I grew up on, you're talking the late 70s, early 80s books, they were wordy books.
Very wordy. Yes.
They were wordy, and it's kind of trying to find that middle ground where we got a stretch in the 2000s where they were so unwordy that you'd read the book in 5 minutes, and it was
Hmm.
splash pages and 2-3 panels at the most. Dialogue was sparse, so I think it's trying to find that middle ground between being so wordy that you're basically a novel and not wordy enough where you can't really tell your vision. So it's learning along the way, and that's a lot of what I've done. It's just knowing where you need to cut things back, where you can expand and tell and have more dialogue, and your artist knowing too, I need this space for the dialogue because this is important. So yeah, it's just you grow and you think you know it, and then you don't. That's what you can think is, yes, I've done 12 issues and I've done 15 books altogether, and there's still always new growth and always new things you learn.
That's right. And this is actually a good question. In developing kind of each issue as you're going along, what comes along generally first? Is it a character, the concept for that issue, or a particular scene, or where does the issue generally begin for you?
For me, it's the major. I like to close out the issues with a big cliffhanger moment.
Yeah.
And basically we would take that big cliffhanger moment and then build it from there, saying, okay, each issue, I know what each major story arc's big cliffhanger moment's going to be and big revelation, but then it's taking each single issue and doing the same thing.
Right.
Taking the single issues and thinking, okay, now that I know at issue, I do each one in 6 issue story arc. So I know that issue 6, issue 12, issue 18, and then the final issue 24, what's going to happen in those issues. Then when I'm mapping out the story overall, it's okay, issue 13, this will be the big reveal. 14, this, building up to that, what is going to be in that the end of those 6 issues. So just knowing the major beats and then kind of filling them in from there.
Absolutely. That's a great way to frame it. Kind of more on the feedback type of question. In
Mhm.
terms of the reader feedback over the years, why do you feel like readers continue to stick with this series and or keep coming back?
I mean, I like to think that I keep them on their toes. I'm not that it's not simple and predictable. That's the
Eh,
hope, of course.
Yes.
And that they don't know what's coming next, so it will keep them along for the ride.
That's right. And another kind of creative question on the back end of things, especially for a series like this,
Mhm.
how do you balance kind of those big world building moments with more of those more intimate, character driven moments?
I think that's the biggest struggle. I mean, writing a big explosive action scene is
Hmm.
the easy scene to write. But
Exactly.
the aftermath of that scene, the quieter moments where the characters have to basically reflect on what just happened to them, those I find to be the more difficult moments to write. So it is finding a balance between that and knowing, okay, there has to be this, each character has a specific arc that they're going to go on, and
Hmm.
it's making sure that you have those quiet moments so that they can have that arc. So I can think back to issue 7. It was an issue where, as far as action went, there wasn't much at all. It was all, we had 2 major events happen in issue 6, and it was just looking back, and there was loss, there was a lot of things that they need to think about. So it became an issue about thinking about what just happened. So those kind of issues where you quiet things down and slow them down, I think they're just as important. And a lot of the readers, I think that's what keeps them along. Is it's not just, okay, action followed by action followed by action. then you can't breathe and it's just too much, and you become, all right, it's 18 splash pages out of 24 because it's just
Yeah,
nothing but action.
totally don't want that at all. Well, getting into the Kickstarter now, especially for issue 12, what makes kind of Immortal Arrow 12 in this volume 2 a special campaign?
This one, I think it's one of these things where I've been promising it for a long time, and I've been saying, okay, issue 12 is where I blow up this world and I
Hmm.
change everything that you know about this world, and it makes the world, I mean, it's not that it's a safe world to begin with, but it's going to be a really crazy place once we hit issue 13. So this is one I've been promising probably since issue 8, like, oh, wait till we get to issue 12.
Okay.
This is where the whole world changes, and it was one of these things where I have two editors that I bring in for the book. I have one who's a story editor and one who really focuses in on the grammar, the punctuation, things like that, and helps with little story beats along the way. And both of them were just like, oh, wow, that ending, I did not see it coming, and you weren't lying. Because I don't tell, pretty much nobody on the team knows what's coming. I like to
Uh-huh.
surprise even them.
Love that. You're actually the first creator I've heard say that, so that's fantastic. And kind of coming almost from the new reader perspective,
Mhm.
for people who may be new to this series, why is this a good place to jump in on issue 12 here?
If you jump in on issue 12, it's really the issues 13 and beyond are kind of launching from what happens in issue 12. So if
There we
you
go.
just started in issue 12, yes, you'd be confused. I mean, I did a recap on the Kickstarter. I recapped every single issue of the series.
There we
So
go.
if you just say, okay, I want to read these, quick little one paragraph blurbs about every single issue, and then I'm just jumping in. I don't feel like back reading those 11 issues. I'm going to start right at 12. In issue 12, I shake up the whole world. So issue 13, you're just going to be watching what happens next, and you're ready. So it's great. It'd be a lot easier if you had read every issue, but like I said, I gave you a quick recap. You could go to the campaign, read fast, and then just know, okay, now issue 13 and beyond, I want to see it when you wreck your world and beyond. That's what I'm here for reading.
Love that. That's really helpful. And this is kind of on the creative side too. In terms of the entire series, what kind of themes are you exploring? Maybe even some of the themes that are maybe under the surface or more subliminal.
I think one of the themes, I mean, we're study. I mean, it's Immortal Era. The premise of the whole book is people have become immortal, and they have no way of dying. It's impossible to die in this world,
Right.
and you begin to realize that the life cycle is important, and the end of the life cycle is important. And when you take that away, humans aren't. They're not whole. They're just fractured beings. So we're
Yes.
looking at, even though death is painful, it's necessary, and if you stop it, you've really ruined things. And one of the characters in the story, it's, spoiler alert for those who haven't read it, but he is the one who brings immortality on because he's trying to save his mother who's terminally ill with cancer, and not realizing that, yes, it sucks, I love my mother, but I have to let her go. And his inability to let her go brings about the chaos of this world. And then
Gotcha.
we also see how to develop a family in a broken world, because family is a huge part of this world. And there's a main character at this point in the story, we know his real name, but mostly through the story he's just referred to as father, and he has gone out of his way to save children, raise them, and basically create a village where there's still a glimmer of hope in existence. And
Hmm.
we see family still existing through the most broken of societies, and just in a place where you wouldn't imagine family and love still being able to thrive.
Man, that's fantastic. This is really good because I feel like a lot of people are going to find this story from different angles. They can find places to come into the story.
Mhm.
If you can share for us, what are some of the rewards and tiers that are available on this particular campaign for anyone who hasn't backed the campaign yet? It did just launch a couple of days ago, and I did put the Kickstarter URL in the chat for everybody. But Ed, take it away.
So in this one, we have, since this is actually launching a hardcover and softcover trade, you
Hmm.
have those two available. So there are people who have told me I don't buy single issues, I wait for the trade. So for the people who have been waiting for the trade, we have that available.
All
And we
right.
have volume 1 as well as volume 2. So if you want the whole story, if you want the whole story so far, you can get that in hard and soft cover. So that's one thing. We have the individual issues of 12. That's 2 of them that are up there right there. The main cover is the explosive cover, and then the one that's next to it's going to be the holofoil cover, which should look beautiful in
Oh
foil.
yeah.
And then I have a variant cover, and I always do for my foils and my variants, I always do only 25 copies. So I make them extremely limited, and most of them end up selling out during the Kickstarter campaign, maybe a handful left
Yeah.
for the con tables, but I try to make it where it's something really limited. And I have people who have jumped on in issues 4 or 5, and they're trying to track down those early ones, and they're gone. I couldn't find them myself if I wanted to. So it's one of those things that, okay, if you want to be able to get everything and you're a completist, you got to get those Kickstarters, because a lot of them, the foils especially, I've
Oh
had, I think,
yeah.
3 campaigns where the foils completely sold out during the campaign.
Got it. Well, that's always got to be a great feeling as a creator, though, too, that that particular reward is just sold out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's always nice when you think, okay, well, there will be none for the table because they're completely gone. And then we have T-shirts. I have a Immortal Era water bottles. I have some of the other series that I've written. So I have another series called Corruptor, and then a one-shot horror story that I wrote called Floaters, and those are both available as well. So if you wanted to read some of the other stuff I've written, we have those on the campaign. And then I was also a part of the Cthulhu Invades Fairy Tales series, and
Hmm.
that book is available in hardcover and softcover in the campaign too.
Fantastic. Ed, I don't know if you've approached the idea for this, but a soundtrack or a playlist for Immortal Era, does one exist? And if not, why not?
You know what? That's a great idea, because the when I write this, a lot of my writing is just driven by the music that I'm listening to.
There we go.
So it would be great. I did have someone write an Immortal Era theme. So
Ooh,
David
fun.
Geringer, he wrote a 1 minute Immortal Era theme for me. So we have that. It would just be, kind of getting that uploaded into SoundCloud or into Spotify so we could have it on there. And then just adding the songs that were in my head as I was writing this book or being played while I was doing it. That would be something a lot of fun to do.
Yeah, it would actually. In terms of after this particular campaign ends, what kind of time frame are backers looking at to receive their book?
My hope is to have everything out by September.
Okay.
That's the goal. So what we're doing now today, I spent the entire earlier part of the day getting things into the drive so my letterer can start putting together the actual trade paperback in hardcover, which meant
There we go.
renumbering pages and everything like that. So I spent the day copying, renumbering, and doing all of that. So that when the campaign ends, once the funds are released, I can get those out. But I'll actually order the books even before I get the funds from Kickstarter,
There we
so
go.
that we get the fastest possible turnaround. And looking at what the different printers I looked at, it looks to be about a 1 month turnaround. So if it ends essentially August 1st, then that gives us all of August, and then start sending out rewards in September.
September. That totally makes sense. Well, at least what you can share with us. Well, this is issue 12 and volume 2 in a trade format.
Mhm.
What is next for the story? When is issue 13 and beyond coming?
13, my artist has just started. He's working on the first 8 pages of issue 13. So
Yes.
he's working on those. It's going to be 24 pages. So within about 3 months, we'll see that. So my hope is for the end of the year to launch that, or earliest next year, since this one is such a larger project, having to do a single issue and a trade.
Yeah.
And then issue 14 is, it's noted out, and now I'm going to start working on the scripting for it. So all the major beats are done for issue 14. It's just now filling in the blanks. And issue 13 was one that actually took kind of a weird turn. I had this specific way I wanted it to end, and then as I was writing it, I realized I want something different. So it
Okay.
actually, one of the few issues that actually has completely changed track during the writing. The major outline and major plot, I completely threw it out, not to be gone for good, but I moved it to issue 14.
Okay, there we go. Well, that actually goes right into my next question.
Okay, go ahead.
What does kind of your writing process look like from kind of your first idea when you are making a script? Is it pretty detailed, or do you kind of leave some room for you and the artist kind of to discover and kind of, like you said, form the story as you're going along almost?
It's very loose. I write loose notes. When as soon as I finished issue 12, I started writing the notes for 13 and beyond, knowing, okay, issue 13, this needs to be the major moment, 14 the major moment, and all the way through. But in issue 12, I leave it with a pretty large cliffhanger, and the way it would have been written originally, we would have had no resolution to that initial cliffhanger.
Right.
So instead, I thought, let me give the answers to this cliffhanger and then move that to issue 14. So it's not that any of the material's gone, it's just paused.
That totally makes sense. And this is actually a question more on the back end of things. When you're approaching, pacing on a particular page or a sequence, how do you, as the writer, decide that visual pacing? How do you kind of approach that?
I look at it as just it needs to have a good flow. I want it to have a cinematic feel to it.
Yes.
Where it's as if you were watching a movie. So I don't do a lot of jumping. If we're in one place, we're going to stay in that place. The camera's going to move around. The action's going to unfold. But I like to kind of just keep it as if you're watching a movie or a television show unfold right there on the page.
That's a good way to frame it, actually. This is actually another kind of good question, because Immortal Era is a long-running series at this point. How do you approach pacing, in a standard single issue versus, a long-form series? How are you approaching pacing differently in those instances?
I think I pace to be so that the issues are fulfilling enough to keep the story moving along, but also knowing that they're going to be collected, that every 6 issues we're going to collect them. So you kind of pace it for single issue big cliffhangers, but when they read it in the trade, of course, those cliffhangers, they're not cliffhangers. They're turn the page and there's the answer. So I want to pace it in a way that it keeps people turning the pages if they're reading a trade. Like, okay, this is a good page turner. And that's one of the biggest things my editor loves to throw at me is this isn't a good page turn. If every odd page, it becomes a turner, you need to keep the readers fully engaged as they're turning each page. And that's another thing that changes in the trade. Your turners kind of flip, where now you're renumbering because you're adding, a new title page, a cover gallery, things like that. So you have to see, are these still compelling page turners? Where the single issue, they work as that, but in a trade, no matter how you redistribute these pages, are they still compelling to keep the reader moving along?
That's right. My next 2 questions are more like industry questions, but as both the creator and the person obviously behind Finish Line Comics, how do you balance and approach the business side with the creative side? Because obviously, creative stuff is great, but you also have to sell those creative things.
Yeah, I think that's always the biggest struggle is juggling those things, where I know I need to be posting on social media every day when I have a live campaign. But I just want to be in a library writing the next book.
Totally.
And I know that's not a choice. Like today, most of my day was spent just renumbering pages, copying, transferring, realizing, okay, count how many pages are there going to be between this and the cover gallery, because issue 12 is not lettered yet. So I had to go through and count and move. And it's a lot of tedious work when I would rather just be sitting there and building a new story. So it's finding that balance. And now I know, okay, I told my letterer I'll be finished by Wednesday, which creates a deadline. And he won't care if I'm not ready by Wednesday. But for me, it makes the deadline of I have to be finished by Wednesday so that Thursday I can sit down and start creating another book.
That's right. And this is actually a good question too, especially being on the indie side of things. How important has the sense of community been to you as a creator?
I think that's a huge thing, because when I started this, I really didn't know anyone in the industry, in the community. I just kind of jumped in feet first and thought, let's see what happens.
Yeah.
And it's a bad philosophy. And that's when people come up to me and they tell me, okay, what tips do you have for creating a book? And I said, meet the people, go on to Facebook, Instagram, all of these different indie comic creating groups, find them, talk to other people. They can teach you some things along the way.
Yes.
And now that I have this community, I did a co-launch with another creator, Lori Calcaterra. I had Rogo, an artist, doing a live sketch during it. And that's the kind of thing you get with the community.
That's right.
You get someone who said, yeah, I'll do a live sketch that we can give away as a reward during your campaign. And Lori, like, yeah, we both have similar books that deal with the loss of death. So why don't we launch together? So you find those people, and then you find other people that are doing live streams, podcasts, things like that. And you find things you can join to help get that word out there. So I think finding the community was an important thing. And that didn't happen to me until about, I think it was issue 3 was in the works. So 1 and 2 were already out. It was during the COVID time. And someone said, hey, do you want to come on my show and promote your book? And it's like, what do you mean? And then he told me about it. It's like, wait, that's what people do. And I had no clue. So I think it's finding that community, discover it before you put your book out. You can have your book ready, but discover that community before you do, because my first Kickstarter was basically funded by the goodwill of my family and friends. But the crazy thing that happened was I did end up getting some long-term readers who have been reading it since issue 1 that I don't know. And those are, you see those familiar faces every single campaign, and okay, the book has kept their interest, which is great.
Absolutely. Well, we're getting into our closing section now, but still some great questions. Ed, if you can share with us any memorable interactions you've had with people, fans appreciating your work, and or if you also have an experience to share where you got to meet a creator that you were a big fan of.
Yeah, I haven't got to meet a lot of the creators I love, but I remember one of the most fun interactions I had. It was the San Diego Comic-Con special edition. It was when Comic-Con had been canceled and they brought it back on the Thanksgiving weekend.
Yeah, I remember
and
that.
I remember this is my first big con. I had done a couple little ones. I had a lot that I had signed up for, and I signed up for these little cons thinking, okay, I'll build a following and then do one of the big ones. And COVID basically made it where all of a sudden I'm coming out, I have 4 books now, and I'm going to try to do that special edition. And, at this point, I didn't have the hugest following. And I remember I pitched to anyone who gets near my table. I become a used car salesman, and you can't stop me. And I remember I pitched to these three young women. They were dressed as Powerpuff Girls, I think. And they were like, okay, well, we'll buy your book. And cosplayers rarely ever buy a book. But then I remember the next day they came, they weren't cosplaying anymore, and they were just giddy and blowing up with excitement over the book.
Oh, I love that.
Oh my gosh, we love this. I love this character. I can't wait to see what happens to her. And they were just, and next year we're coming and we're cosplaying as your characters. So it was just the excitement that they had when they got home and read these books was just, it was phenomenal, because at that point I hadn't had a lot of person-to-person feedback.
Right. Well, coming in that same vein, can you share with us any of your upcoming appearances, store signings, podcast appearances, anything in that realm coming up?
Well, I do 2 weekly podcasts. I have one every Wednesday that's completely music related, and that's called First Impression. So I'll be doing it this Wednesday, and I have a country folk singer, Maisie Owen, who's going to be coming on the show and doing an interview with me. So
very cool.
I'll be doing that. And then it's called Saturday Morning Comic Talk. I have creators on, and we just talk about random nonsense. I said, okay, you've all done your interviews where you answer the questions like this, where you talk about your growth and your goals, but that's really hard to do with 6 people.
Yeah, it is.
So instead I answer a question like, okay, what's the worst book to movie adaptation? And we ask questions like that, which is easier to do with 6 people.
Yes.
Each person has a quick answer, they give it, and then the conversation can grow and move from there. But to do kind of an in-depth dig into the people, we're already at about 35 minutes. And that's just with me. If we had 5 other people in the room, well, now we have a 3-hour podcast, and it's hard to do. So for that one, I just keep it light and fluffy, and it's a lot of fun. And then as far as my next con, I'll be in September at the Tucson Comic Con, and then in October, LA Comic Con, and then November I'll be at the OC Book Fair. So those are the ones on the books right now. I'll be at San Diego Comic Con. I have a panel that I'll be speaking on, which is writing for indie comics. So if you're at San Diego Comic Con, it's Friday, I believe, at 3:00. If you follow any of my social media, I'll definitely be posting the heck out of when and where to find that. But I know it is Friday, and yeah, I'll be speaking there with some other great indie creators.
Perfect. I've had panels on Fridays. Friday panels are generally well attended, so I wish you the best of luck. Well, Ed, where can people find you online and follow along with all the things you're working on?
All of my online is under Finish Line Comics. So I have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok. So if you go there, you can follow that. If you want to listen, like I said, Wednesday is always about bands. That's what kind of compelled me to read the Our Band Is Your Life book, because we were discussing a Fugazi album, and I realized they had a chapter. So I'm like, all right, let me read all about Fugazi and Minor Threat, because those two are kind of branches of the same tree. And they had a chapter about each one, and that's where I got all of my background information for that particular episode. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. So if you want to come check out music stuff, check our Wednesday show out.
We definitely will. Well, a fun question that's food related, because I love food. What is your favorite snack or meal to give yourself some energy to work on a project?
Wow, snack or meal? I'm very boring with my drinks. It's always water, but for a good snack, I am a salt fiend. So give me a good bag of chips, and I'm ready to go.
Love that. Any particular flavor or just plain?
I think I love I'm trying to think of my favorite would be like the sour cream and onion.
Oh yeah, those are delicious. Well, we'll end with a reader-centric question then, Ed. What is next in your to be read pile?
My next in my to be read pile is, I'm trying to think. I'm reading. I'm almost finished with the book I Am Princess X, and then from there, I'm thinking it will be San Diego Comic Con. I'm going to find my good new read right in there.
Oh yeah.
But I do have, actually, I'm reading. It's called La Chancla by Jesse Sosa, and I'm doing it. I do little 1-minute book reviews. So that's the next comic that I'm reading, because I told him I would do a review for it. So that's my next comic. And my next book, like I said, Comic-Con is where I'll go discover it.
Oh, there's so many places to discover books there. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Ed, thank you for coming on the show today. It's been a blast chatting with you all about Immortal Era, and especially with the Kickstarter. It still has several weeks to go, so make sure you support it and share it. Is there any last thoughts, Ed, you would like to share about the Kickstarter, comics in general, whatever you'd like to close us with?
I would just say, read indie comics. That's where the best stories are happening right now.
Mm-hmm. Can't agree more with that, especially as a librarian, especially that you're putting out trades and hardcovers. Those will end up in libraries, because the library market is quite a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Well, everybody out there, thank you for sticking with us for almost 39 minutes. We've had an audience the entire time. So this has been Comics for All. Once again, where comics, creativity, and community all connect, and we will see you all next time. Take care, everybody.